shade this courtyard in order to do that, and it's more of almost a sculpture type issue, you know. So a lot of people are using these almost like fabric sculpture now in high-end homes. But you can see that each connection angle, look at this footing here, how the footing is poured with the pier, and the connection angle is exactly in the right shape for the shade sail itself. It's exactly in the center of both these oblique cables. Okay? And a lot of that requires some planning before the installation. This all has to be planned out. All right, so how do you do what you should and don't make these mistakes? Well, there's an old process and what we call a modern process or a newer process. In the old process, before there was things to help you like software, a site was often measured in only 5 dimensions. You'd measure the height of the poles, and then you go up and climb a ladder, take a rope, and measure the connection points. Okay? And you worked out the sail pattern by averaging those diagonals. Excuse me. And also, what the old process was to typically take your fabric and roll out maybe 2 lengths of fabric, sew a flat seam in between those, and so now you have one large blank. This process still works, and it has worked for a long time. Then what they would do is you would take and you would lay out your dimensions on this and try to outline the shade sail on that large blank of fabric. And for the most part, with the forgiveness of shade cloth being a stretch of about 3 to 4% in the warp, the long distance of your roll, if you roll out a piece of fabric that's a 12-foot wide piece of fabric, if you roll it out 100 feet long, the 100-foot length is what's called the warp threads, W-A-R-P, warp. That's the long threads in the roll. The weft threads are the threads in the 12-foot distance that go over and around the warp threads. Those stretch differently in most fabrics. Some pre-constraints, like the Ferraris, are pretty much equal on that. Most shade cloth, though, will stretch longer in the warp than it does in the weft. About 3 to 1, about 3% stretch in the warp, maybe 4%, 1 to 2% in the weft. Okay? And so what you need to do is plan on that as well. You need to plan and actually try to pre-shrink the shade sail so that when that stretch happens, that it's now the right size. If you don't plan for that fabric stretch, what you end up with then is a shade sail now that when you put it up on the poles and start tensioning it, you run out of turnbuckle. Your turnbuckles are now fully closed and the shade sail still isn't tight because the fabric has stretched that amount. All right, so the modern process, and this is where some software products come in. We're going to be showing these throughout the show, is one's called MPANEL Insight and Shade Designer. This actually will allow you to do a couple of things. This actually allows you to go out and put the same measurements in, but instead of just measuring those 5 dimensions, we now measure, with the software, it automatically measures up to 10 dimensions and sometimes even more. It not only measures from the top of the pole around, but it measures from the top of the pole here down to the bottom of this one, over to this one, up to the top of this one, over here, down to the bottom of this one. You actually have a spider web of dimension measurements now. It's much more accurate than just measuring the top dimensions on your poles. All right. Also, what happens is software is actually going to give you a different pattern. Notice that this pattern actually has the curved edges on it on the outside, but also there's a slightly curved concave shape in the middle. Okay? And what happens here is you're actually creating a 3-dimensional pattern. When you cut these out, and you're now cutting out the single point-to-point and a piece here, you can lay a piece of awning rail between those 3 points or a piece of flexible PVC pipe. And Patrick, what do you guys use when you guys do this?
It's called a sail batten. It's a piece of fiberglass rod, sail batten.
Okay. And take your grease, so you lay those 3 points out, take that sail and your dot or your grease pencil, and you can draw those curves in, and draw this curve in. And you can see that the dip, this actually has a curved edge here. When you cut out these patterns and sew them together, You cannot lay them flat out on the floor. They're going to be cupped. They're actually going to have a slight cup to them and a slight curvature to them because that's going to be, they're actually going to be showing the 3D shape right in the beginning. Okay. All right. And so a correctly formed 3D shade cell will result in even stresses and less wrinkles and a longer product life. Okay. So how am I doing on time, Steve? Cool. Okay. All right. So what I'd like to show you is real quick about the modern process on this and how like MPANEL Shade Designer would work for something like this. So I'm going to go launch MPANEL Shade Designer software.
Anybody using drones? Do aerial views?
Some people are, yeah. Actually, part of the piece that I've got here, MPANEL's Insight is one of the other products, and you can actually take a couple things. You can either do Google Earth, or any kind of satellite photo. You can do a PDF from an architectural site plan. You can also do Google drone footage and actually put it in. It's really great. Start here. Yes, sir. Yes. We use about standard of 8% depth to span ratio. So that what that means is if your pole to pole distance is 100 inches, that center dip is about 8 inches. So it's an 8% dip to span. It's about the industry standard. Okay, so a couple of products real quick to show you, and I'm going to be showing this a lot more tomorrow as well, but we had the question about the drone footage. So this is called MPANEL Insight, and this is something you can use to really help sell the shade cell to your customer. It's a development product that actually helps you really just sort of get a good concept, and it actually allows you to show your customer what the shade cell is going to look like. So here's where you can put in your client name, and I'm just going to say the Jones family, and it's going to be a shade cell. You can put your project information in when you're doing this, and then you click over here to the next thing, say ground image. And when you go to your ground image, you can actually say, hey, I want to add a ground image. Again, we were talking, you just asked a question about drone footage. That's fantastic. I'm going to click just from image file here, and what it's going to do, it's going to pull up a option. Actually, this is running super slow since I'm trying to load my phone. It's going to pull up any kind of image you have, whether it's a Google image or from the drone footage.
Not having any problems with 2D photos converting to 3D imagery?
No, well, what it is, it's actually going to it's going to be a flat shape, and I'll show you here. I've got actually here's some site plans, and this might be a site plan that an architect developed or an aerial photograph, and it's going to be flat. So I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, here's our site plan. I'm going to go ahead and pull that one up and say, I want to open that. And it's going to open this site plan up. And so here's just a flat JPEG image, and this could be from any source. This happens to be like you could have a PDF or just something you grab off the internet. And I've got this courtyard right here, so a couple things I can do is, if I wanted to, I've got, like down here in the lower right-hand corner, I've got the north arrow. That's going to be critical to me, so I'm going to grab that north arrow, and I'm going to say, hey, you know what, I want to move that. I want to put that north arrow maybe up here by the building, just so that it's with me on my part. And then I'm going to grab just the area that I want, like maybe that right there, and I'm going to say, okay. And so what that's going to do is, that's going to bring in that image into my session, okay? And it gives me a grid. Now right now, that grid line is 3 feet. Say, hey, this is every 3 feet. So what I want to do is I want to click and I want to say, I want to scale between these marks. So I'm going to say, I know from this sidewalk to this sidewalk over here is 20 feet. So now what's happened is, I scale this, and it's actually going to change the scale of the image itself. I'm going to click OK, and it's actually going to scale the image now to an actual scale. So now, I've got a 20-foot dimension right here, and it's showing upside down, but I've got 20 feet there. So now every grid is 3 feet, and I'm on 20 feet. So I'm going to go to Build Model now, and here's where I can start putting some things in. I'm going to say, hey, let's go ahead and put a pole in. And I'm going to come over here to the height, and I'm going to say, you know what, let's make this first pole 12 feet tall. And I'm going to come over and I'm going to say, I just want to put that pole right there. And it's going to launch and put pole number 1 at 12 feet. I'm going to put another pole in. Let's put this pole in, and working on that 1/3, let's make this one about 8 feet tall. Let's put our third pole in. Let's put this one in a little taller. How about 16 feet over here? And our fourth pole in. And again, let's put it in at 8 feet. So, what we have now is we have a site plan here. Well, if I click my mouse and rotate it, you can see what's happened. We actually have those poles are in now in 3 dimensions, okay? So, your customer that couldn't visualize what this looks like now, you could be doing this with him on a laptop, and you can show them exactly where those poles are going to be. Then, we go now to, I've got a tri-sail, if you're doing a 3-point, or a quad sail. And I'm going to say, hey, I want to add a sail in between that pole, pole A, and I'll let it select, pole B, pole C, and pole D. And I will tell you, when you guys are using the software, it's much quicker than what's happening here. I've got some PowerPoints and a video queued up for the next session here. So, okay, we can see this now. So, here's what's happened is you can actually see that 3D shade there. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, you know what, let's take a look at what this is going to be. And I can almost say, you know what, this is good, but that pole right there should have been over here, and this one maybe should have been a little closer to the sidewalk, right? Or maybe my customer says, can we make it a little bigger? It's a little bit shaped. By clicking on that pole, I'll click on pole number 2, and I'm going to get an option up here. It's going to say, once I click on it, I'm going to say, hey, I want to move that pole. I can grab that pole and drag it and move it to a new location. And what's going to happen is the software should update, and it's going to update the shade sail to a new location. Okay. So you can interactively drag and move those poles around. You can add more sails. I can combine sails together. The next thing I'm going to click on is shadows on the top. And for the shadows, you can see I've got New Orleans right now, and I've got it's noon in June. Let's see. I'm not sure that's the right. Oh, it's not the right time. So I'll say. I can actually change the color of my shade. I'm going to change it to a darker color like black. You can actually Google the latitude and longitude for any place in the country, Los Angeles, Palm Springs. You can put it exactly where it is. And I'll say commit changes. And it'll actually show you now the shade. And I can walk through and say, show me the shade at 2 p.m. Show me the shade at 4 p.m. So you can actually see and watch this by putting in wherever your latitude and longitude timeline is. You can actually show your client where the shade's going to be at any time of the year, any month, and any time of day. Okay. The last thing here is the reports. And when you go to the reports page, what this does is actually give you a PDF. It's a printable PDF, I'm going to say 50-page width. Oh, 50-page height, sorry. Okay, so you get a visualization you can show your customer. You can load your own logos in here, your company logos, so this report actually gets customized to you. You can go down to the shadows page. And what this is going to give you, the shadows page, when it jumps on here, is you can show your customer 4 different themed shadows here. So 4 different times of day, show them where the shadow is going to be at 4 different times. This is a printable PDF. You can email to them, hand to them, do whatever you want to do there. This also, if I say the pole layout, if the customer signs off on this, you now have a dimension site plan so you know where to lay your footings. You can actually measure from the building, you can add more dimensions to this, and you can actually have now a site plan that shows you exactly where to go and lay your footings out and put your footings in. Okay. All right. Also, the lug targets, do you remember we talked about the eyelets and how where those are? This actually shows you a plan that shows when you put your pole in, it gives you a dimension to measure from that pole where this pole should be facing. So every pole now could be pointing in the right direction to plan for that shade. Okay. Here's the lean targets. If your poles are leaning out, you can actually plan for that. And then finally, the pole